Good morning, everybody. Now, this week, the government introduced the online safety bill into Parliament. And I've been talking about this for a long time, and so have other people who know that this is a very, very dangerous thing that they're doing, which is to try to curtail free speech and to close down any opinions which the government don't like. But it's been presented to everybody as protecting children from pornography and harmful sexual content. And that sounds great, but actually the government doesn't care a monkey's about that at all. Because while they're talking about doing this online, in schools, they've introduced relationships and sex education to all schools, all secondary schools, relationships education into primary schools. But there isn't much difference between the two bits of the subject. And it doesn't matter whether it's the Tories in England, Labour in Wales, the SNP in Scotland, you're getting more and more sexually explicit content going to lower and lower ages in lessons. And, I'm 50 years old and, I've been around the world. I've been travelled around the world. But I've been campaigning against this for a very long time. And in looking at some of the materials that are going into schools to young children, they're talking about things that I've never heard of, which are absolutely disgusting and shocking. And I wouldn't give it to an 18-year-old, let alone a 5-year-old. And that's happening. So the government is not concerned about protecting children from these kinds of materials because they're sending them into schools. Well, they're letting it happen. And so something else is going on with this online safety bill. It's not about the thing that it's the hook to try to get everybody on board. Oh, yes, we need to do that. But they're not looking and seeing what they're doing in other places. But what this is really about, of course, is shutting down dissident opinion or people who have a different opinion to the mainstream narrative. And the mainstream narrative is set by the government, and then it's also, they set the agenda. It's almost a closed loop, The government owns the BBC, they tell the BBC what to say, the BBC say it, and then the other people in Parliament, they listen to what the BBC says, and, so on, and it just goes round in a closed loop. They don't want people leaving the mainstream and going off looking for alternative views and news because we know that the mainstream lies, and they have done for 2 years over the whole lockdown situation and everything else that's going on. And they're lying now about the things going on in the east of in Eastern Europe. You know what I mean? I'm just being careful with the algorithms here. And, they're going to continue to lie about whatever is next on the agenda of the Great Reset. So they've made this new phrase that has just come up with increasing regularity over the last 2 years that I've never heard before. Disinformation or misinformation. So I get accused regularly of spreading misinformation, even though I'm looking and, I'm very informed about things and I've got a scientific background. I still get accused of those things because I don't agree with what's coming on the mainstream because I can see through what they're saying straight away. But they want to close down anyone who's got a different opinion. And so what they're saying in the bill is they're going to force social media companies and tech companies to remove content which is legal but harmful. Well, what does that mean? Nobody knows what that actually means yet because it says the definition of what's legal but harmful will be set by the government. And they'll have to be rubber stamped by Parliament, which, of course, the fake Conservatives and Labour will happily do. So anything they deem to be legal but harmful will be removed on pain of an investigation by Ofcom, which is going to have the power to fine and give jail sentences, it looks like. Now, the way this is written looks like that can be done without due process. I mean, you need... What should happen, if someone commits a crime, then they get charged by the police, it goes to the CPS, and then you have a court hearing, and then the court makes a ruling on whether you've committed a crime or not, and they will set a fine or a prison sentence. But the way this bill is written, it looks like they're going to give Ofcom the power to actually charge people and set fines rather than the police doing it. Now, I'm no fan of the police anymore, which is a shame, because all my life until a couple of years ago, when they started brutalizing people in the lockdowns, I supported the police. I don't anymore, because I've seen how terribly they've turned against the people, particularly the Metropolitan Police in London against freedom protesters. So I don't trust the police, but I wouldn't trust Ofcom either. I mean, this is actually circumventing due process and our rights, our human rights that we have in law, not to be charged without evidence, prima facie evidence of a criminal offence taking place. They shouldn't be giving a government quango the power to just fine people arbitrarily for something that is legal but deemed harmful by some arbitrary person in government. This is completely wrong, and it goes against all the heritage of freedoms and human rights that we've built up in this country over centuries, and for over a millennia, actually. So we need to fight the online harms bill and make sure that it doesn't stick. I think what will probably happen is they'll vote it through, because most of the fake Conservatives and Labour MPs and SNP MPs are just going to go along with this. They love this. More state control, more repression of people who have a different opinion and point of view, even though they say they're going to respect free speech at the same time as they're taking it away and putting in place these very nebulous, undefined wordings and phrases into the law that could mean anybody to anybody at any point in the future. I mean, this is really bad law to make something like this that is not clearly defined in a watertight manner, that someone 20 years or 50 years or 100 years down the line can't look at and then use and exploit in a manner for which it wasn't intended. But of course, the intention is to get rid of people and silence people who don't toe the government, World Economic Forum, United Nations, Council of Foreign Relations narratives. That's what this is all about. If this goes through, I'm still leading the Heritage Party. I've got my logo on here. There you go. Join us. Please join us in the Heritage Party, because we are the only party standing up for freedom. We're the only party that I know of who said anything against the online safety bill, and it's our specific policy that if we get into power, we'll stand in the next election. If we get in, we will repeal this bill, this act, and restore freedom and freedom of speech. And we'll also get rid of the disgusting sexualizing content which is going into schools as well, and return to traditional family principles of education, where education is to edify and educate children, not to indoctrinate them and sexualize them and mess them up, which is what a lot of state schools are doing.